鬼岛之音
Ghost Island Media.
I wonder if people have ever done kind of like clam chowder fusion.
Meet Chai Lee, general manager of Uber Eats Taiwan. Chai spent most of her childhood in tropical countries, but for college and for business school, she went to Boston, Massachusetts.
Now that I think of it, oh goodness, I could make my bread and put some clam chowder inside.
This is Luke Martin, Cultural Affairs Officer at the American Institute in Taiwan. You might have seen him in the news. His connection to food? Well, he bakes. Welcome to the AIT podcast from the American Institute in Taiwan and Ghost Island Media. We're here to talk about everyone's favorite topic, food. In each episode, we'll discuss with a special guest food from an American city. Today, we head to Boston, Massachusetts.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chai, and I'm the general manager for Uber Eats in Taiwan. Very pleased to be here.
Hi, my name's Luke. I'm the Cultural Affairs Officer at AIT, and I'm also very happy to be here to talk about Boston and food and all great things. So I'm very happy to be here today, partly because I'm not a Boston pro. I actually am embarrassed to say I've only visited one time. It was a great visit. I have a lot of kind of Boston historical background knowledge, and it's part of my growing up, of course. Everybody knows Boston. So I love being here because I'm going to have questions for you and hear what it was like studying there and living there.
Yeah, happy to share. I have to say that I'm no expert on Boston myself, but I did go to school there cumulatively for 6 years. As an international student.
So did you choose Boston because it was Boston or because it was home to Wellesley and Harvard?
Yeah. So actually, I feel like when people apply for college, they rarely pick a location as their first factor. I think the couple things I thought about at my tender young age of 17 at the time was just the quality of the school and then the level of financial aid because US schools are very expensive. So Wellesley it was. Also, my dad was super pro Wellesley because it's an all-women's college.
Exactly.
Plus, Madam Chiang Kai-shek went there, so there's that kind of Taiwan pride element to it. As for Harvard, where I attended business school is $100,000 investment. I need to go to the top schools for it to be worthwhile as an investment ROI. So I only applied to Stanford and Harvard. I only got into Harvard, so Harvard it was. Yeah, and it was just a coincidence that they were both in the Boston area.
So before you went to Boston, what was your preconception of what Boston was? What things did you know about it?
Yeah. Red Sox, I guess.
Okay.
Is it going to be really cold?
And was it really cold?
And it was. And actually, if I were to just think back on my memories, I think it was mostly I was very cold. The truth is, I grew up all over Southeast Asia. So, I grew up in Taiwan, but I also spent time in the Philippines as well as Singapore. And when I was very little, I was in Libya. So I've always only known the tropics. I have to admit, winters there were pretty challenging. They were just very long. The days were very dreary. So I got like a sun lamp, just find a way to manage.
Right. The seasonal affective disorder. So for me, what's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Boston? And for me, it was all sports. It was Boston Bruins, Bobby Orr, number 4, best defenseman of all time. And that's partly because I grew up in Canada and hockey was a big thing. So for me was sort of what Boston was all about. How did you feel as a Taiwan student there? A lot of other Taiwanese and Asians that were there as well.
Yeah. Well, Wellesley in particular was very diverse. I think Asians accounted for 30% of the student population. I was exposed to Asian activism, which was very interesting because having grown up in Asia myself, I just always thought if you're Asian, you're just Asian. But for my Asian American friends, they wrestle with and think a lot about, their dual identity. Ethnically, they're Asian, but they were born and they grew up in the US, so they consider themselves very much American. So that was an interesting aspect.
How did that then change you, afterwards, as you thought about your identity and what you bring back to Taiwan?
Yeah, I think for me, it's more developing kind of a third culture kid mentality of cultural fluency and fluidity, which I think is more common now. But at the time, I think, it was definitely something I had to learn. Taking food as an example, But when I first arrived, I stayed with a host family because landed in Boston with 2 suitcases. My family didn't come with me. So I had a host family to help me get accustomed to the first few days. And I was just so shocked to see the mom, like she just poured soup out of a box and heated up, and that was like lunch. And I was just like, what? I just didn't see that ever before, you know, in Taiwan or in my family, every meal is like cooked from scratch. So things like that just showed me like, wow, it's just really different here. Now, of course, as a working mom, I've come to appreciate the conveniences afforded by these products. But yeah, that was just one example of like, wow, this is going to be a very different experience.
So was it like a Boston chowder that she poured out of the box, or what was it?
I wish I could say it was, but it was just tomato soup.
Oh, okay. Well, that counts. Maybe that's one thing we could talk about is food in Boston, like what your experience was.
Well, my favorite memories was there was like a lobster day in college where everyone just got all you can eat lobster.
Did they dress up as lobsters or anything like to make it into a real celebration?
I don't think so.
That would be a good idea if they haven't done that.
That would have been a good idea.
It's Lobster Day.
Yeah. But that was cool because in Taiwan, the only time you eat lobster is like in the form of soup, like gelatinous soup. But there it's like a whole lobster. And then I think I like the desserts there, Mike's Pastries. I think they started with one shop, but they have a few locations now. They have great cannoli started by an Italian guy.
Yeah, exactly. That is a big part of where it, you know, watch a movie like The Departed really talks about some of that heritage there ethnically, culturally. And Italian-Irish.
So, you know, for an Asian student who misses home, going to Super88, the Asian supermarket, is a must. Just going there to buy, you know, the things you might want to cook at home yourself, like dumplings,
right,
soy sauce, whatnot.
Xiaolongbao.
Yeah, and there's Chinatown in Boston, which you can go and get boba. So apparently boba is like a huge thing now, taking over US.
It certainly has, for sure. Absolutely. So at this point, maybe we could eat some food. How about that?
Sounds good. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so in front of us here, we have some New England clam chowder. And I was just saying that what immediately struck me is there's this issue of what's the difference between New England chowder and San Francisco or Bay Area chowder? And I always thought it was the bread bowl because, you know, in San Francisco, you got, is it Boudin's, the sourdough, and you go down to Pier 39 and they have that. And I think for me, I loved the sourdough so much. That was the thing. And then I realized, oh, the soup is fantastic as well. So I know if I look at this here, it looks like a regular chowder, roux-based, nice and creamy. I actually don't know if there's a difference in taste between Boston and San Francisco. Do you?
I will say, though, that the bread bowls were twice the size of this bread bowl here in front of us.
This is a little baby bowl. It's okay. It's nice. It's tasty. There's a smooth taste to it. Salty, not too salty. Little bit of oil, maybe olive oil, I guess, in that they're using.
And do they add celery?
But you're right.
Like that's what gives the umami, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Chowder.
Really? Is that how you get the umami, from celery?
When I use some, like when I cook on my own, which is not very frequently.
Do you use Uber Eats a lot?
Oh yeah, I mean, I live on it. I think as a working mom, it's a must.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So like celery essence or like celery powder, like is sometimes like a thing in recipes.
Oh goodness, I didn't even know that. Okay, I'm going to try this little clam.
I feel like you could be a food commentator.
I couldn't actually. I don't know if you've ever been, I think it's the Taipei Fish Market over in Zhongshan, if you've been there. I love going there and picking out some of the fresh food, and you can have them cook it up for you too.
You mean the one near like Aquatic Addiction?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Aquatic Addiction. Yeah. So there's potato in this too, which is nice. Let's see how the potato is cooked.
I think the cool thing about this is like it can be a meal on its own because it has protein, it has starch, carbs.
Oh, and you know, as like a working mom, this would have been good for you because you don't have any dishes afterwards. You just eat the dishes, right?
You just eat the bread bowl. I wonder what people do with like the bread after they
eat it.
They take it out of the bread bowl.
Oh, that inside. Maybe you make like a stuffing with it, or you could make croutons.
Yeah. You know, speaking of stuffing, like, don't think people drink Clam chowder, like during Thanksgiving dinners. I didn't really recall that experience. It's more like an everyday thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Do you wake up in the morning and have it for breakfast?
I think we had it like in our cafeteria.
Really?
In college, school provided free food, quote unquote free. It was in our tuition. Well, random question. Have you had the clam chowder in Costco?
No. Seriously?
Yeah, it's a staple.
Does it come out of a box? Can you pour it?
No. You just get it along with when they sell, pizza.
And the giant slices of pizza.
Beef rolls, yeah.
No
I'd be
way.
curious about your take on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will have to do that.
Versus this one.
Okay. Does it come in a bowl? Like a bread bowl?
No. It comes in like a takeout bowl.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I had some black pepper, I would actually put some black pepper in. But it's nice. I think I just generally like a little bit of more spice.
I wonder if people have like ever done kind of like clam chowder fusion.
Ooh, what would you put it in? As a mom, what are you going to put in so your kids are going to eat it?
So I was actually thinking of like Vietnamese sriracha.
Oh yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. Sriracha would be perfect.
Really?
On this.
I thought you would say that'd be like pretty.
No. That would be really nice. Actually, I would love any hot sauce on this.
Yeah, for that kick.
Yep, and I think you could use other fish in this as well.
Potentially.
And you can put chicken in anything, right?
No, that's sacrilege. It's a clam chowder.
It's a chowder. That means it's kind of sea-based, so that a chicken wouldn't work. I've never seen a chicken swim, so. What else do you remember eating in Boston?
So actually,
do you have any memory that comes back?
As a poor student, sometimes I would just venture out of the campus, and there's this really good Thai place, walking distance from Wellesley. It's called Blue Ginger, but it's shut down now. But it was there forever.
Yeah. Oh, is that right? Okay. Yeah, I love Thai food. You can't go wrong with Thai food. How do you feel that being, you lived as an expat in Southeast Asia with your family and then in the US, and how has that impacted how you cook now? Like, how do you cook differently?
Oh, I'm not a great cook. So
you're supposed to, this is a chance to really shine. You can say, my husband says I'm the best cook.
Yeah, I wish, but I optimize for ease, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Western cooking is a lot easier than traditional Taiwanese cooking.
Oh yeah, time-wise or because?
Oh, time-wise, yeah. Because traditional Taiwanese cooking, it takes a lot of time to prep, a lot of cutting, and also the garlic, it takes forever.
Yeah.
And then Western, I think, just pop something in the oven. It's like a one dish meal, and then you're done.
Ooh,
but
that's interesting.
Taiwanese food is always like you need three dishes, but all of them are wok based, right?
That's right. If you have one burner.
So you have to do it in succession.
Okay, so I love this idea of that there is an American food, and you just described somebody putting a casserole in the oven. Is that what American food kind of feels like to you?
Baking, I think, is a big element that I miss.
Because you don't have do you have an oven in your?
No,
you don't.
Most places here don't come with an oven. So I think baking is a big element. I think the various peppers and spices, I think it's a little harder to find here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I'm lucky I have an oven, so I do a lot of baking of bread and pizza here. Actually, it's kind of funny. I had some of my colleagues over and taught them how to bake bread, and they all loved it. Now that I think of it, oh goodness, I could make my bread and put some clam chowder inside. So maybe that's my goal.
You can go get some Costco clam chowder.
All right, then I don't have to make it. Perfect.
Yeah. I think that works.
So one of my thing with Boston, you ever heard of Boston Pizza, the chain? So it's like this chain. I was like, well, obviously that's got to come from Boston. But I did a little research on it before, and it's actually a Canadian franchise that came out of Edmonton, of all places, in 1964, founded by a Greek immigrant. But I think there's this sort of tendency to put Boston on it if you want to make it sort of hearty, fresh, and maybe differentiate it from New York. Little trivia for you: next time you see a Boston pizzeria, it's actually Canadian.
Wow. I didn't know that.
The other very Boston thing would be Boston cream pie. Do you remember eating it?
I don't recall super specifically.
Yeah, me neither. But I have this funny feeling. You're not sure if it's pie or it's cake.
Okay.
Because I think it's covered and there's cream on the inside and it's really delicious.
Yeah, but it's interesting what you mentioned about New York, right? I think Boston is kind of like a cousin to New York, or maybe a laid back cousin to New York. From a career perspective or a college town perspective, it certainly is a feeder. into, New York, right? So it's like study in Boston and then go intern or work in New York. That was very common. New York is only a 4-hour, bus ride away and an even shorter flight away. Even I myself, so I interned for a summer on Wall Street in New York. It's kind of like if you don't like the intensity of New York, but you still want the East Coast experience, then you can stay in Boston.
It's interesting this comes up. I had a conversation with someone who's looking, actually comparing schools in Brooklyn and then Boston as well. And she's very kind of torn because like, how do you compare those two places? Like New York and Boston really are different.
Totally
like the
different.
Energy is so different between the two of them.
So if you want that as your college experience, that's great. But I know there are people who really want a campus experience, which is totally unique on its own. And it's probably the only time in your life that you can get that experience.
Yeah.
And that's what you have in Boston. And especially in the schools I went to, like Wellesley, we had a beautiful campus, right next to a lake.
Yeah.
And Harvard is in Cambridge, right next to the Charles River. And so I thought that was really special. And the fact that there's such a density of schools in that area, I was able to take classes at Harvard and at MIT during my time at Wellesley. And there was just a lot of like exchanges between the schools. I think that's super unique to Boston.
It's kind of personally ironic where I just realized my son just made a decision on college and I asked him why he chose the one he did. And it's because of the campus and the mascot. That's how he
the
made,
mascot.
He thought it was a pretty cool mascot. So he decided that. So I guess sometimes you make decisions on, what feels good. And certainly campuses are a very appealing place to be. You make your decision off of that as well.
Yeah. Wellesley doesn't have a mascot.
Wellesley
it's a color.
Blue.
So we're called Wellesley Blue.
That is honestly
Go blue.
Yeah, that's a questionable mascot for sure. I'm not sure how you can get too excited about
Well, I didn't
color.
pick Wellesley because of the mascot. So yeah, it's something I can live with.
All right. Well, so do not choose Wellesley if you are into a mascot.
You can choose Wellesley for the motto, which I still remember.
Could you sing it for us or?
No, it's just a sentence. It's like to serve and not to be served. So I think that's kind of the spirit.
That's nice. I like
the
that.
School. I think what I really appreciated about it is just how visible like female leadership is, just because it's an all women's college, right? So it has a lot of women's professors. The dean is a woman, etc. So
How did that inspire you? I mean, obviously, you're a businesswoman who's very focused on leading company here in Taiwan. Is that part of what you saw when you were there? That led you down
it
that
normalized that for me. I think that's the biggest
That's
takeaway.
a great word, normalized it for you.
Yeah. So it's almost like after 4 years there, like gender isn't even really a thing. Like it's just a given that, you'll have a career and build a family. And because I just saw so many role models.
Yeah.
And then it's only when left school that I realized, that's not really a given. A lot of women don't have those role models and they're seeking that.
Bringing up Uber and Uber Eats itself was one reason I wanted to talk to you. So there's two things I'd be fascinated to hear from. The first one is kind of how the pandemic changed your business model and impacted the business. And then second, I had this idea, like, how is Uber Eats in the future going to impact food itself? Like everybody's ordering on Uber Eats. So then how does that change how restaurants and innovators think about the food that they make? But on that first one itself, so how did the pandemic change your business and change your life? I imagine you didn't have a lot of sleep during that time.
Yeah, well, we were definitely very busy. When I joined Uber Eats 5 years ago, it was a very nice to have service. Out of my 10 friends, at best, one used it.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and then we just grew and grew. And in the pandemic, I think the biggest change was we were declared an essential service by the government. So it really went through this evolution of being this is a premium thing that I can use to give myself some time back to, we need this to survive, because during the pandemic, there's so much hesitance and even guidelines against going out, right? So in the pandemic, we actually saw a much larger number of grocery merchants come on board. Historically, we were just all about restaurants, right? But during the pandemic, people were hesitant to go grocery shopping even. We also brought on board wet markets, which was really quite innovative for us.
That's great. No, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's actually really operationally complex to do that because a wet market has like so many stalls, right? So
And they deal with cash. A lot of that's cash based. So that's
a lot of it's cash based. So yeah, we had to work out how to disperse the funds to each stall merchant afterwards. So that was, one big change. I think even grocery stores started to sell not just like fresh produce, but more like ready to eat, like things that you can quickly prepare at home.
Mm-hmm.
And then
like
we
that
also
boxed tomato soup that you talked about earlier, right?
Exactly. And then the last thing is we saw restaurants start to sell also groceries themselves. So like a dumpling restaurant would sell frozen dumplings. And so they'll be making those versions just so that we can make customers' lives easier.
Interesting. Well, that kind of goes into that second part. So you're seeing like this frozen prepared foods coming out of restaurants themselves, which is an interesting innovation when they think people aren't going to order Uber Eats every day, but maybe they'll double up the order because then they can heat this up in some way too.
Yeah, sure.
Do you think it's going to change? I don't know, this is so speculative, but is it going to change how we eat or how we think about food, how we create food in the future?
It's a great question. I think innovation in terms of kitchen operations, I think is one thing that we see, like the rise of cloud kitchens, dark kitchens, which improves their unit economics, to be honest.
Yeah.
I would say another interesting trend is the healthy bentos. One thing that we've learned as we try to understand our customers is like food delivery has enabled people to eat healthier.
Yeah, because it used to be this snack. It's going to be pizza, which you can't eat every single day, but if you have healthy options, it's a little different.
Yeah, and it's easy to access healthy bentos now, whereas previously, if you were confined to going out within your walking radius, it really wasn't as common.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I think that sort of that reputation of takeout food is more on the maybe caloric rich and fat heavy things that you're going to get when you're stressed out and you want, but this became a part of life during the pandemic and that certainly changes the ingredients and the types of food you have.
Yeah, and actually as a company, our vision is to deliver a better day. It's a vision that globally we honed in on during the pandemic. There are a few elements to it. One element is delivery gives you time back, time that you would have otherwise had to spend preparing a meal or going out to get stuff. And with that time back, you can become a better version of yourself by investing that time in things that you care about, whether it's your family, whether it's in your health, whether it's in hobbies and whatnot. And then I think there is an aspiration down the road from our product team to incorporate more health-related elements to help you make smarter choices. So including having caloric or nutritional information on the menus to help you better gauge what you want. Yeah. Another interesting trend and also something that we are beginning to focus more on is sustainability.
Do you mean from the product perspective or, materials, or what do you mean by sustainability?
Yeah, spot on. So two key themes here. One is packaging and the other is on carbon emissions. So on the part of delivery partners. So these are two big themes that we want to tackle in the long run. We're starting to make some progress towards it, but these are kind of huge multifactorial problems that really require cross-functional collaboration internally and externally. But we do have a vision to be, 100% electrified by 2040, I think.
That's interesting. Well, you must have different data coming from Taiwan because of the use of scooters, for instance. These are scooters rather than cars.
Yeah. No, that's super insightful. Actually, Taiwan is leading the world in terms of electric vehicles. It's also a testament to our Taiwanese government. So right now, 15% of our delivery partners use an electric scooter. And almost 20% of our orders are delivered using electric vehicles. And that is like by far within kind of Uber globally. We're like the leader in that.
Wow,
and
that's
so
great.
we would love to continue to make progress on that.
When you think about your education in the United States, how did it prepare you for what you're doing now? Like, how did it set you up and kind of differentiate you when you're in an interview and things?
If I think about my biggest takeaway from both Wellesley and Harvard, Wellesley I mentioned already. I think it's just normalizing female leadership. So
that.
just giving me that confidence. And then I think Harvard, so Harvard Business School is super unique for its case method. That's what it's famous for, i.e. no homework. So like we never had to do problem sets. We never had to like write essays or anything. All we needed ever to do was to read the cases, but we need to come to each class ready to participate. So classes are never lecture style. It was always you need to raise your hand, speak your mind, give your opinion, and you're actually graded on that, on how much you participate and how well you participate. So I think that really simulates a boardroom. And I think that gave me the confidence to just be vocal about my opinions in a group setting.
Yeah, I can see that confidence you would get in having all these peers around you and sharing your idea, being brave enough to do that. Certainly works in your business today. That's what you need.
Yeah. And I was terrible at it to begin. My upbringing was more, be a bit more conservative. But there, I mean, I had no choice. You're just forced to put yourself out there. Yeah, so, and that was great. It's basically 2 years of that training.
That's great. I've heard that too, that, with U.S. education, the real key for employers is having these employees that are creative, they're brave, they'll even disagree with their bosses as part of the dynamic of working. And I do think that's valuable. I mean, that's what kind of creates growth and innovation as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely a cultural difference. I think I saw this interesting infographic, right? Of like,
I love infographics. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They're very effective communication mediums. But there was like an infographic on like the size of the boss and then comparing like Chinese culture to like German culture.
Oh, that's it. Like the actual physical. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like as in like how much authority the boss carries. And like, I think in traditional Asian culture, the boss is really big.
Yeah,
like,
I have a visual of that. I can see it.
Yeah, but like in I guess in that example, German culture, the boss is only slightly bigger and almost treated like as a peer.
Did they have him wearing lederhosen or something in the graphic just to differentiate?
No, it was just like very simple.
Okay,
but I think Uber is kind of in between. And I think kind of aspires more to that egalitarian model.
Yeah.
And that is also the culture I'm trying to build within the team.
I mean, I've only visited Boston once. A lot of my kind of impression of Boston would be from history books and then from movies like The Departed. There's like these Boston movies, or Click and Clack, the Tappet Brothers, the car talk on NPR, Harvard Square they reported from. So I have like these ideas of what Boston is, but I think I need a tour guide like you to tell me, where do I go?
Yeah. Well, I'll take you to Super88.
Super
no, I'm
88.
just kidding.
No, I'll go to Super88. Perfect. We'll start there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think Boston's super diverse. So, I mean, I would definitely take you to Newbury Street.
Newbury Street.
It's kind of like an upscale street with like a lot of boutiques.
Okay. I'm not going to buy anything there, but I still should go.
Yeah. I once got like a coat there, but I needed to alter my sleeve length, and just the alterations alone cost like $60 US.
Wow. Okay.
So anyway, that gives you a sense of
Good.
like Newbury Street. Of
I'm
course,
not
I
gonna buy
didn't
anything
afford.
again.
I wasn't able to afford anything until I became a working professional. So this was definitely not during my college years. But yeah, you should definitely go. There's a great ice cream shop there called JP Licks. Yeah, fantastic ice cream. You
Okay.
can just get one and walk down the street.
Oh, I love ice cream.
And then just for contrast, I would take you to downtown, which is also right next to Chinatown, and you can go get a boba and probably get some dim sum.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then you would probably want to go to Harvard Square.
Right.
Harvard has a lot of resources, actually. Like they have concerts, orchestral concerts that are like free to the public. And you can go to their libraries, which are amazing. So just kind of get that educational flavor in.
Yeah.
And to just walk on the grounds of Harvard.
I went for a nice bike ride along the harbor, which was great. Beautiful views out there. And it's a nice kind of complicated harbor as well. Anyway, it was lovely.
Yes. And speaking of water, I would recommend you go sailing on the Charles River, or you could go on a jog along the Charles River.
All right.
Which is always really beautiful.
Do they put tea on these things? No, that's my Boston Tea Party joke, Okay, and what maybe the most famous would be Fenway Park. Have you
Fenway
been?
Park. Yeah. Clearly you're super passionate about sports, so that would be a must for you.
Okay.
And then maybe the last thing would be Boston has these beautiful brownstone buildings just in the residential areas. So I think I would just go and kind of soak it all in. I mean, it has such heritage and history. I think that's something that is so unique to New England.
So if I can ask you a personal question, I'm going to give you 3 names and you have to say among them who would most represent Boston. Okay, ready? These are like significant historical figures. First of all would be Mark Wahlberg. Second would be Matt Damon. Third would be Ben Affleck.
Wow. Okay.
Are you going to choose one of them to represent Boston?
Yeah, I think I could. I could. I'll probably choose Matt Damon.
Oh, interesting.
Because of his character in Good Will Hunting.
That's right.
Which was also set in the Boston area.
Yeah, that's true. Not Ben Affleck as Batman. We're not going to do that. Okay. And Mark Wahlberg and Ted. You got to watch Ted. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with him.
Okay. Don't let your kids watch it.
Sounds good. Very impressed with your historical acumen.
So, Chai, what does Boston mean to you?
Well, I would love to also talk about just a personal story of like how I got baptized in Boston.
Wow. In the harbor itself?
No, not in the harbor. It was actually just like a sprinkling thing. But yeah, I think Boston, just the whole area, is very formative for me because, I went to school there twice.
Yeah.
And then right before I returned to Taiwan, that's also where I was baptized and I became a Christian. I was just part of a fellowship that was like on a campus. So I've always wanted to bring my family back to Boston and just show them around, like, hey, this is where mom, grew up. This is where I had probably some of my lowest moments in my life, but also where I really grew most. I don't know. I mean, for you, would you say kind of educational seasons are quite formative?
Oh my gosh,
relative to working seasons?
What I'm realizing, they're also formative for the parent because I'm sending number 4 off to college now. So it's definitely formative for these kids. You're learning about who you are and who you relate with, and chances are you're going to maybe find, a partner, and everything about it is transformative. Like you chose this all girls college, and man, that really, normalized. I love that word. The powerful women leaders. Yeah. So I think it is. It changes. It's got to change us. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like the magic of a city is there's definitely the tourist aspects, right? Which includes the food, the sights and whatnot. But the true magic is really in kind of the experiences and the people that you share those experiences with when you're there.
Right.
And I have to say, from that lens, I actually still am a big champion for Boston.
Yeah.
Because it may not be the most flashy city from a tourist perspective, but it really is just so rich in culture and diversity, and also the fact that it's a college town where there's just so much energy and so much idealism, which comes with it so much possibility. Like, I feel like being a college town, there's this idealism and this hope that kind of just permeates the atmosphere.
Right.
Like, that's really special.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited because this summer I'm going to go visit a good friend of mine who lives in Boston, and I will take some of this, and I'm definitely going to take him to Super88. That's the first place we're going to go based on your recommendation.
I was kidding about that one, by the way.
No. I'm taking it seriously. That's where I'm going to go and tell him this is what Boston's all about.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chai. It was really nice speaking with you.
Great chatting with you too, Luke.
Yeah,
thank you.
You've been listening to the AIT podcast, co-produced by the American Institute in Taiwan, Ghost Island Media, and American Spaces. Please share and subscribe, and give us a follow on all our social media accounts. This episode is produced by me, Emily Waiwu. Teresa Yen is our production coordinator and editor. Our editing assistant is Gerald Williams. Engineering supervisor is Dino Lin. Graphics by Logan Dosher. Thanks to Chloe Ramon and Mikey Redding for assisting. See you next episode.